Today's Play in the Shed challenge is to build a better soft face hammer. This is the old one that I've got here, a purchased one, and this is the material that I'm going to use to make the new soft face hammer. A bit of Delrin type stuff and a lump of lead. So let's see how we go. Clearly this next process is not something that I would recommend that you do because it's so dangerous. Because you see, I'm going to heat up a bit of old lead in an old dog tin until it's melted and then pour it into this receptacle that I've got here. I used to use this process a lot when I was building wooden clocks. The lead was used for the drive weights. Anyway, lead's melted, pour it into this tin. Now all that steam that's coming off is water because I've soaked the wood so that it doesn't burn the wood. But I'm avoiding sniffing any of it up because, as we know, lead's not all that great for your health. Now that the lead's cooled down, I can take it out of the wood, and the lead shrinks a little when it cools, and so it slides right out. No problem at all. This receptacle is larger than I need, so I'll be able to mill it down to size later. But first, let's prepare the plastic end. I'm just going to tap this for an M10 thread. I want both ends to be removable, so as they get damaged, I'll just make new ends and screw the new ends on. I moulded more lead than I needed, so I'm just cutting it down to size. It can be a bit problematic to cut lead because it gets very sticky, but I succeeded. Time to prepare the lead. First I'll just face off the end and then tap the M10 thread. It's time to prepare the body, and the body is an old piece of exhaust pipe. Well, it's actually a new piece of exhaust pipe, but it's an offcut. And I've got some 6mm flat bar here. I'm going to cut these out and then weld those to the ends, and that'll make up the body. Don't know how I ever coped without having this little bandsaw. It was so cheap, but yet is so efficient. Obviously I can't cut round corners with it, so we've got a fairly rough cut that we're going to finish on the lathe. In order to be able to finish this off on the lathe, I've just got a M6 bolt. I'm going to put 2 nuts on it because I want to hold the material just away from the jaws a little bit, so I'll grab 1.5 nuts in the jaws, tighten it down, and Bob should be my uncle. Sorry about the barking in the background. We're babysitting the grand dog. Well, that was a failure. I made the blanks too small. I've got it down to dimension and I've still got some flat sides. Oh well, let's go and start again. It's not a shed project without at least one failure. I think we've got success this time, and with the aid of the famous DRO, I've got a perfect fit. As I mentioned, I'm going to weld these inside that exhaust pipe. I want it reasonably straight, even though I'm going to finish it off on the lathe. And I'm going to tap it down just a little bit further than the lip, and then I'm going to autogenous weld it all. This will give me enough lip material to weld into the 6mm ends. There we go, all nicely welded up. Now, to clean this up and to make sure that everything's nice and square, I'm just going to face off these ends. I'll be just doing the lightest skim pass that I can. I finish off with some sandpaper, makes it come up nice and shiny. Each end can now be drilled out for an M10 thread. Both the plastic and the lead faces are bigger diameter than they need to be. So now I'm just using a couple of bits of all thread, M10 all thread that I've cut, that I'll use to join each one. But I'll just put one end in and then put it in the lathe, and then I can take it down to size. Easy. Well, that's the main part of the head done. That looks pretty good. Now for the handle. Now I've got an old piece of tube that I think was from an old bicycle. Now there's a hole in the head that I'm going to eventually fill up with lead, and I'm going to have a wooden handle. This is a piece of old gum tree that's been lying around. So it's time to weld on that tube that the wooden handle will go into. This is my least favourite welding activity. It's quite thin material and it's going around in a oblongy type circle. To help the process, I'm using some stainless filler wire. The stainless has a lower melting point, so it's a little bit easier to weld. Sadly, the weld looks like it's been put down by a dog with diarrhea, but that's okay, I can cope with that. Time to make the handle, and I'm going to do it on the lathe, but I've only got a 3-jaw chuck, but I've got this bit of aluminium with a slot in it. So, one end's held in the lathe with that aluminium. The slot cramps up and holds one end of the wood, and I've got tail support at the other. I thought it'd be a brilliant idea to protect the lathe by putting paper under it. Well, that didn't work. So I'll just have to clean up the mess when I'm finished. Let's check the fit. No, it doesn't quite go on, but I reckon that if I just sand that down, I might just be lucky. Now I really should have put the tail support back in here, but I didn't, and got away with it. So let's check again. Oh, that's really good. That's just going to tap on. Lovely. It's nice to know that every now and then I can get success first time. Anyway, adding a few more features here, using the compound slide to get a bit of an angle on the end there. The lathe tools do a reasonable job of cutting wood, this hard anyway, but it still leaves it reasonably rough. Fortunately, a bit of sandpaper does the job, no problem. Last features before I take it out of the lathe. A couple of scraps of wood with some wire in between. Allows me to hold it down in those slots, and the friction burns the slots and adds a little feature and a bit of grip as well. All the bits are done and it's time to assemble. A bit of medium strength Loctite will hold all the bits together. As I intended to make this a bit of a dead blow hammer, that's what that hole is for. And I've got a number of tiny little lead sinkers here that I'm just going to fill up the head with. Just in case you haven't come across a dead blow hammer before, the moving lead inside the hammer stops the hammer from bouncing when it hits something. So when you hit something, it stays hit. It only remains to finish off the handle now. I've got a bit of shellac that I'm using, and I thought it might colour up the handle a bit more, but because this timber is so hard, it's really not colouring at all, and I'm not particularly happy with that finish. So it's back to the cupboard and for a bit of teak stain instead. And if my manliness proves adequate, I can get the lid off. Right, that's better. Yes, I know this looks horrible and messy at the moment, but just hang on. It'll get better. You see, that's starting to look nice. Sort of antique-y look. And it's highlighting the little variations in the timber as well. I like it. The job's all done. Let's compare the scungy old bought in the shop hammer and the beautiful, lovely, excellent built in the shed hammer. Much nicer. It's been an easy but fun project. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.